Imagine pulling into your driveway after a long day, already thinking about dinner, maybe a shower, maybe just relaxing. But then something feels off. You grab your house keys, walk up to your front door, and the key doesn't fit. You try again. Nothing. You check the handle. Locked. Not by you. That sinking feeling hits your stomach. You're locked out of your own home. At first, you think, maybe you're just tired. Maybe you're using the wrong key. But no, this is your house. Your lock, your door, and now it won't open. So you walk around, trying other entrances. Every one is locked. Windows too. All of them. You call your friend to make sure you're not losing your mind. Then you remember your garage. You've got a G-Wagon parked in there. A car you've worked years to afford. You step to the side of the house to check the garage door, and it's locked tight too. Not from the outside, from the inside. Now your confusion turns to suspicion. Your eyes drift across the street. And there she is. Karen, HOA board member. Neighborhood nuisance. Always watching from her porch. She's not sipping tea like usual. No, she's staring right at you with a smirk. A smug little grin, like she's already won a battle you didn't even know you were in. You walk over. You ask her, calmly, what's going on. She doesn't even blink. She says, I had to take control of the property. It was abandoned. Abandoned? You live here. Your name is on the deed. You pay your dues. Your bills. Everything. She shrugs like it's no big deal. Says the HOA gave her permission to secure the property. Then she drops the bomb. The car's in safe hands now. Consider it part of your unpaid dues. You stare at her, stunned. Your G-Wagon. Taken. By someone who thinks she's judge, jury, and repo officer all in one. You remind her this is theft. She doesn't care. She tells you to take it up with the HOA. Which, of course, she's basically running. You want to scream, but instead, you call the police. And while you're waiting, you start thinking, how did she even get inside? You'd locked up. Cameras? You check your phone. But oddly, the camera feed is blank. Offline. You feel like you're being played. Police arrive. Not one. Not two. A whole group. At least 5 cars roll up. You explain everything. The changed locks, the stolen car, the missing footage, the smug HOA woman who thinks she owns a whole block. The officers walk over to her. She stands there, arms crossed, like she's done nothing wrong. She shows them some paperwork. Probably fake notices, maybe a doctored HOA letter. You can't hear what she's saying, but her body language says it all. She's confident. Too confident. That's when the officers start getting curious. One walks around back. Another checks the front lock. A third heads to the garage. Then the lead officer asks her for access to the garage. She hesitates, says something about privacy, liability. You see her confidence crack just a little. Then backup arrives. More officers. 2 more cruisers. Lights flashing. Neighbors start coming out of their houses, watching from sidewalks and driveways. Phones come out. People start recording. Karen sees them. Her face stiffens. One officer steps forward and tells her plainly, either she opened the garage or they're getting a warrant. And that's when things really start to unravel. You feel your heart pounding, not just because you want your car back, but because you know something else is going on. Something she doesn't want anyone to see. And from the way the officers are lining up outside the garage door now, hands near their belts, radios crackling, they know it too. No one says a word as the key turns in the garage lock. Everyone watches. You hold your breath. The door lifts slowly. And what's inside? Well, let's just say that G-Wagon wasn't the only thing in there. And Karen? Her smirk is gone. Her face has gone pale. And those cops? Now there are 10 of them. And they aren't just here for backup anymore. Let's rewind for a second. This all started weeks ago. Not with the G-Wagon. Not even with the locks. It began the moment Karen decided she ran the neighborhood. You know the type. Clipboard in one hand. HOA rulebook in the other. Eyes always peeking through blinds. Every small thing, she had a comment. Your grass was too long? Warning. You left your trash bin out 10 minutes late? Fine. You parked slightly off-center, in your own driveway? Violation notice. At first, it was annoying. Just another power-tripping board member with nothing better to do. But slowly, things got personal. She started calling you out during HOA meetings, making things up, saying your yard was messy when it wasn't, telling people your dog barked all night, even though you don't have a dog. Then, one day you got a letter, not a regular HOA notice. No, this one was bold. Red stamp across the top. Delinquent dues. Except you'd paid. Every month. On time. With proof. You contacted the HOA office. They said everything was up to date. But Karen? She kept insisting there was a mistake. Said she'd take care of it. Then more letters came. Each more aggressive than the last. Threats of liens. Notices of hearings you weren't invited to. And yet, when you asked the other board members about it, they looked confused. They hadn't seen any of it. That's when it clicked. Karen was acting alone, sending fake letters, using her HOA position to push a personal agenda. Maybe she didn't like your car. Maybe she didn't like you. Maybe she just needed to feel in control. Whatever it was escalating. Then came the maintenance check. That's what the notice said. A general inspection of all properties. Except when the day came, no one else on the block got inspected. Just you. She showed up with a locksmith. Said it was standard protocol. You refused entry. Of course. She backed off. But something in her eyes said she wasn't done. Fast forward a few days. You go on a short work trip. 3 days. You come back to find your locks changed and your garage sealed from the inside. And the G-Wagon, the one thing Karen always seemed to mention during her little power trips, gone. You remembered once overhearing her talk about how certain people shouldn't own luxury vehicles if they can't follow the rules. That stuck with you. It sounded like a threat even back then. Now it felt like a confession. Neighbors said they saw her walking in and out of your property while you were gone. Some thought you gave her permission. Others thought it was strange, but didn't want to get involved. One neighbor even said she saw Karen driving the G-Wagon just around the block, like she was taking it for a spin. It all lined up. The fake dues, the made-up violations, the unauthorized entry. She was building a case, not a legal one, a fantasy in her head where she could reclaim your property for the HOA. But you weren't the only one keeping notes. The police had questions too. When they started digging, things turned up fast. Other residents had similar stories. Little things that didn't seem serious at the time. A missing package, a tampered gate, a few random charges on HOA bills that no one could explain. Karen had been running a quiet little power scheme for months, maybe longer. And because no one spoke up, she got bolder, more reckless. But now, under those flashing lights, with half the block watching and 10 cops standing in front of your garage, she couldn't hide anymore. She was fidgeting now, trying to act calm, but her hands kept moving. Her voice had lost its edge. You could see it. The slow crumble of someone who knew the game was up, but didn't want to admit it. The officers didn't just want to see your car. They were there for everything. The complaints, the fake notices, the unauthorized access. It had gone from neighborhood drama to criminal investigation. And as the garage door started to rise, the look on her face said it all. She knew what was coming. And for once, she had no power to stop it. The garage door creaked as it lifted. Slow, loud. Every eye on the block was locked in. Karen had stepped back by now, arms crossed, but her posture told a different story. She wasn't confident anymore. She was bracing. Inside, the lights flickered on. The G-Wagon was right there in the middle of the garage, just like you expected. But that wasn't what made one of the officers raise his eyebrows. It was everything around it. There were boxes, stacks of them, some labeled, some not. A few had neighbors' names written in marker. Others were taped shut, heavy enough that one officer leaned down to check inside. And what he found? A stash of open mail, bills, packages, magazines. Not just yours. Several different names. None of them hers. Another officer opened a black tote sitting against the wall. Inside, bundles of HOA documents, old forms checks, letters. Some were clearly altered, names scratched out, amounts rewritten. It didn't take long for them to realize this wasn't just some random misunderstanding. And still, Karen stood there silent. For a second, you wondered if maybe she thought she could talk her way out of this, that she'd come up with some dramatic excuse and twist everything around, that maybe she'd even blame you. But that plan was falling apart fast. Then one of the cops asked her point blank, "Do you have any documentation showing this property was abandoned?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. He asked again, louder, "Did you get approval to enter and change the locks?" Still no answer, just a shaky shrug. Not even a lie this time. The lead officer turned to you. "Do you want to press charges?" That hit hard, because at this point, it wasn't just about the car. It wasn't even about the house. It was everything. The invasion, the lies, the control, the months of mental games, the stolen time, the feeling of being watched, threatened, targeted. You nodded, without hesitation. That's when things sped up. 2 officers stepped toward Karen. She didn't run, didn't fight, just stood there frozen as they asked her to turn around. The cuffs clicked into place fast. The block was dead quiet, except for the radio squawking. And then, just when you thought it was over, another officer came out of the garage holding a set of printed HOA violation letters. Dozens of them, all unsigned, all pre-written, with blank spaces where names and addresses could be filled in. One even had your name typed in, along with a fake signature. You felt your jaw clench. That's how far she was planning to go. It wasn't a one-time thing. She had a system, a pattern. She was preparing to do this again. Officers started interviewing neighbors right there on the spot. A few admitted they'd had weird run-ins with Karen, too. One said their mailbox was broken into last month. Another had their front gate ripped off but was told by Karen that it was a routine removal. One man, 2 houses down, said he'd gotten a bill for an HOA fine that didn't even exist in the bylaws. And now, all those stories were finally connecting, piece by piece. Back inside the garage, one of the younger officers noticed something taped to the wall, a printed floor plan of your house, with little notes scribbled along the edges, marked cabinets, circled rooms. It was like she'd mapped out your whole home. She knew exactly where to go, what to look for, what to take. Another cop leaned in and whispered, "This isn't just trespassing. This is premeditated." That one word stuck in your head, premeditated, because this wasn't just a bad decision or a sudden overstep. She'd been planning this, watching you, making moves like a chess player weeks in advance. And now it was all out in the open. The officers started taking photos. Every angle, every box, every piece of evidence. A crime scene unit was already being called. One officer stayed behind to catalog the items, while the others loaded Karen into the cruiser. Her eyes didn't meet yours. She just stared ahead, dead silent, like the whole world had vanished around her. And as the garage door closed behind them, you stood there watching, not saying a word, because you didn't need to. The police didn't leave right away. They stayed for hours, taking photos, bagging evidence, speaking with neighbors one by one. What started as a bizarre lockout turned into something much bigger, something no one saw coming, not even you. Your G-Wagon was returned immediately, but not without a full inspection. Officers checked every inch of it, making sure nothing was hidden or tampered with. The back seat had been pushed forward. The glove box was open. She'd been inside. You could feel it. The car didn't even smell like you anymore. There was a hint of cheap perfume and something else, maybe a strong cleaning spray, almost like she tried to wipe something down. But the strangest part? The dash cam was missing. You always kept a small cam running when you drove. Nothing fancy, just in case. But now, the mount was still there in the camera, gone, removed cleanly, like someone didn't want to be seen. One of the officers nodded when you told him. "That's consistent with intent," he said. "Means she knew what she was doing wasn't just wrong. It was illegal, and she didn't want to get caught." They found the camera later, by the way, stuffed inside one of those unmarked boxes in the garage. Battery pulled out. The footage was recoverable, though, And what it showed made everything even clearer. There was Karen entering your garage. No gloves, no rush, just bold, deliberate movement. She walked in like she owned the place, looked straight into the camera, even smiled, then walked over and unplugged it. That footage alone was enough to lock in a charge for burglary. While the cops kept digging, word spread fast. The HOA board held an emergency meeting the next morning. Not at the clubhouse, but at someone's house down the street. Everyone showed up, even people who never usually attended. Turns out, this wasn't Karen's first time crossing the line. One board member admitted she'd pressured them into signing blank documents, said it was for efficiency. Another confessed she'd adjusted a neighbor's dues when they didn't attend meetings. And a few said they complained before, but nothing happened. No follow-ups. No investigations. Karen always had an excuse. Always a reason to shut things down. One neighbor brought a folder. Inside were copies of emails they'd sent the board 6 months ago about strange charges and unapproved inspections. Emails that were supposedly lost. Another neighbor had screenshots of texts where Karen claimed she was entitled to enforce neighborhood values however she saw fit. The room got quiet after that one. An attorney from the County HOA Oversight Committee was called in. They started pulling records. And that's when the real mess came out. Karen had been accessing HOA funds. Nothing massive. Not enough to notice right away. But there were little expenses, gift cards, purchases, odd reimbursements. One for a locksmith. One for a garage door repair. Another for legal review with no receipt. She'd been funneling money. Using authority she didn't have, signing off as acting president. When she was never even elected, people were angry, shocked, embarrassed, but mostly they felt betrayed. This was someone who lived among them, someone who claimed to protect their neighborhood, and instead, she was using it like her own personal kingdom. The board voted to suspend all current rules and begin a full audit. Karen was removed immediately, of course. Not that she could attend. She was already facing charges. Breaking and entering, grand theft auto, fraud, mail theft, misuse of funds, and possibly more, depending on what else turned up. The police said it could take weeks to process everything. But the important part? She was out, exposed. People began stopping by her house, apologizing, thanking you. One man even said, "You saved this whole block, whether you meant to or not." And maybe that was true, because what started as a personal violation had uncovered a whole chain of corruption. One woman, drunk on power, had built a tiny empire, but she got sloppy, greedy, and she forgot the most important rule. Sooner or later, someone always notices. It's strange how quiet things feel after a storm. A few days passed, and your house finally started to feel like home again. The locks were changed, again, this time by someone you hired. Cameras? Upgraded. New system. Multiple angles. Cloud storage. Karen wasn't coming back, but you weren't taking chances anymore. Trust wasn't just broken, it was shattered. The garage was cleaned out. All the boxes, all the stolen mail, all the junk she had stored around her car. They were taken into evidence. The place looked empty for a while. Too empty. But you didn't rush to fill it. You let the space breathe. Just being able to open your own garage without fear, that was enough for now. But the neighborhood didn't stay quiet for long. A notice appeared, this time a real one, from the actual HOA board. It announced a full re-election. Every position. No exceptions. They were even bringing in a third-party team to monitor the voting. No more shady backroom decisions. No more forged documents. People who had never cared about HOA meetings before suddenly had opinions. Passion. They wanted change. You walked down the street one evening and saw neighbors talking on driveways, sharing stories, comparing notes. A woman with 2 kids waved you over. She said Karen once threatened to fine her for leaving sidewalk chalk drawings on the pavement. Another guy mentioned how Karen told him he couldn't fly a sports flag because it wasn't aesthetic. Turns out, Karen had spent more time bullying than managing, and now people were waking up to it. Still, the police investigation wasn't done. Not even close. Officers came back a few more times. Quietly, without sirens. Just suits and gloves and paperwork. You handed over the dash cam footage, and they took it without a word. One of them nodded slowly as he watched the first few seconds. They were also investigating the forged documents. That part ran deeper than anyone expected. Not just your neighborhood, possibly 2 or 3 others nearby. Karen had friends. Or maybe people who just looked the other way. Some names were starting to pop up more than once. One rumor said she'd used HOA funds to buy electronics. Another claimed she'd sold items taken from people's garages. No proof yet, but officers were asking questions. A lot of them. You were asked to testify. Not in court yet, just a formal statement. You told them everything, from the weird letters to the fake, dues to the locks being changed. Every strange detail. Every red flag that made you pause. You even handed over the emails you'd saved. The ones you thought were probably pointless before. Now, every word mattered. Karen's attorney reached out once. A short letter, vague, said she was willing to negotiate. The police told you not to reply. Let the evidence speak, they said. And honestly, that was fine by you. You didn't need revenge. You just wanted the truth exposed, and for it to stay exposed. Weeks passed. The new HOA board was elected. A retired school principal was voted in as president. A younger guy who worked in cybersecurity took over as treasurer. The mood at the next meeting was different. Lighter. People laughed. They listened. They actually discussed real problems, like street repairs and shared landscaping, without drama or power games. You spoke, too. Not long. Just enough. You said what happened to you wasn't just about your car or your house. It was about how easy it is to let someone take control when nobody's paying attention, and how fast that control can turn ugly. People clapped. Not loud. Just enough to let you know they heard you. Life didn't magically go back to normal. It never does. But it got better, and safer, and quieter in the right ways. You could sit on your porch now without feeling like someone was watching. Your neighbors waved more. Kids rode bikes again. No one got fined for sidewalk chalk. And that G-Wagon? You still drive it. But now, every time you park in the garage and hit that button to close the door, you watch it seal shut with a different kind of satisfaction. Not just because it's your car. Not just because it's your house. But because you know, really know, it's finally yours again. A month later, you got a call from the detective handling your case. His voice was calm, but you could tell something had shifted. They'd gone through the documents found in the garage. Every file, every fake letter, every strange receipt. It was worse than anyone expected. Karen hadn't just tampered with a few HOA notices. She forged legal documents, opened a fake HOA account at a small credit union, and was funneling money into it under a business name no one recognized. The account had over $180,000 in it. She'd been collecting fines from residents, pocketing them, and reporting them as donations. On paper, it looked clean, but when they checked the signatures, the email logs, the timestamps, everything unraveled. Her little empire had been built on a pile of lies, and now it was collapsing fast. You weren't the only victim, not even close. One neighbor discovered she'd paid Karen almost $900 over the course of 2 years in exterior maintenance fees, even though the HOA didn't offer any exterior services. Another found out Karen had threatened foreclosure for missing a payment that didn't even exist. A young couple down the street had their shed dismantled one weekend after Karen told them it violated a visibility clause. That clause was made up, and now, with evidence in hand, more residents were speaking out. They came forward with copies of old letters, strange bills, even voice recordings. Everyone had a piece of the puzzle. It just took time for someone to put them all together. That someone was you. The police called your statement the tipping point, the moment things couldn't be ignored anymore. And with each new piece of information, the case kept growing. Karen had already been charged, but now prosecutors were adding more. Identity theft, wire fraud, misuse of federal mail. She wasn't just in trouble, she was facing years. But strangely enough, She still hadn't spoken a word publicly. No apology. No denial. Not even a whisper. Just silence. Her house sat empty, mailbox overflowing, windows dark. A for sale sign appeared eventually, but no one claimed responsibility. People avoided walking near it, like the place had its own shadow now. You kept to yourself for a while, let things settle, rebuilt your routines, fixed small things around the house that Karen had messed with, an outlet cover in the garage, a scratch cabinet, the keypad that had been disabled. Each fix felt like taking something back. One evening, you went for a walk. The air was cooler than usual. You passed by houses you'd seen 100 times, but now they felt different, safer. A man watering his lawn looked up and said, "Appreciate what you did, man." Another neighbor called out from his porch and offered a drink. You declined, but you smiled. People remembered. People noticed. Not because you made noise, but because you stayed calm. You let the truth do the work. And you weren't done. Not yet. The new HOA board had reached out to you. They wanted help, real help, to fix what was broken. Not just the paperwork, but the trust, the structure, the way things were run. You weren't sure at first. You'd never want to be involved in HOA politics. But then again, look what happened when no one was. So you said yes. You weren't on a power trip. You didn't carry a clipboard or bark rules. You just showed up. You asked questions. You helped review documents and suggested new guidelines, ones with transparency and actual checks in place. No one person could make decisions alone anymore. Every complaint was logged. Every transaction had 2 signatures. Karen's system relied on silence, on people being too busy or too polite to look closely. That system was dead now. One night, you opened your garage door and looked at the space again. Clean, bright, no shadows, no secrets. You leaned on the hood of your G-Wagon and watched the sky darken. For the first time in a long time, it just felt normal. And it hit you. You didn't just get your property back. You got your peace back. And somehow, by standing up quietly, you'd help give that peace to everyone around you. You didn't plan to be the one who uncovered everything. But when Karen changed your locks and tried to take what was yours, she started something she couldn't finish. And you finished it for her. The days kept moving forward, but the ripple effects of what happened didn't fade. Sometimes, it hit you in unexpected ways. One afternoon, you were at a local coffee shop. Nothing special, just grabbing a quick drink before heading back home. As you waited in line, an older woman tapped your shoulder. She smiled and said, "I just wanted to thank you. You don't even know how much that mess with Karen affected all of us." You nodded, surprised. She went on. "I kept quiet for a long time, afraid to speak up, thought it wasn't my place. But after everything came out, I started talking to my neighbors. We formed a little group, just people trying to make sure this never happens again." It wasn't the first time you heard something like that. People were starting to wake up. The fear Karen had spread, slow, creeping fear, was turning into something else. Community, awareness, a willingness to stand together. The HOA meetings transformed. They weren't just about rules anymore. They became a place for ideas, for voices. People who never cared about lawn heights or mailbox colors showed up to share concerns about safety, about neighborhood projects, even about supporting each other during tough times. You found yourself listening more than speaking, watching how a broken system began to heal. It was messy. It wasn't perfect. But it was real, and it was theirs. Meanwhile, the legal side was dragging on. Karen's trial was scheduled months out, but whispers of it kept circulating. Some neighbors wanted her banned from ever living in the community again. Others debated what kind of punishment fit someone who betrayed so many. You stayed out of most of those talks. It wasn't about revenge for you. It was about making sure no one else got hurt like that again. One evening, a local reporter reached out. She'd heard about your story and wanted to feature it in a piece about HOA corruption nationwide. You weren't sure at first. Privacy mattered. But then you realized maybe sharing what happened could help others. Maybe it could shine a light where darkness had ruled. The interview went smoother than expected. You told your story plainly. No exaggerations, no drama. Just the facts. The locks change. The stolen car. The police. The broken trust. The slow rebuilding. The article went viral. People across the country commented. Some shared their own stories. Some asked for advice. The story became more than just a local cautionary tale. It turned into a warning and a call for transparency everywhere. Back home, neighbors thanked you again. A few joked that you were now the unofficial HOA watchdog. You laughed but felt a strange pride. It wasn't about titles. It was about responsibility, about standing up when things went wrong, even if it wasn't easy. As weeks turned into months, the neighborhood changed in subtle ways. New security cameras appeared on street corners. A neighborhood watch program started. People greeted each other more often. Kids played outside again, their laughter replacing the silence that had settled during Karen's reign. You still parked your G-Wagon in the garage every night. The locks clicked shut without worry. And sometimes when the street was quiet, you'd step outside just to listen, to feel the normalcy you fought so hard to get back. One night, while sitting on your porch, you noticed a for sale sign in Karen's old house had been taken down. New owners had moved in. Fresh paint, new curtains. A fresh start. Maybe you didn't think about Karen much anymore. She was part of the past now. But what stayed with you was a lesson. How power could be abused in small places. How silence could let it grow. And how one person standing up quietly could start a chain reaction that no one saw coming. The neighborhood wasn't perfect. Nothing ever is. But it was free again. And that freedom felt like the biggest victory of all. Even after everything settled down, there was still a sense that the story wasn't over. Sometimes, when you least expected it, reminders showed up, small, subtle things that kept the tension alive. One morning, you found a note taped to your garage door. No signature, just a few words. Watch your back. The handwriting was messy, almost like someone was in a hurry. You didn't panic, but it stuck with you. Who would want to threaten you now? After Karen was gone, you mentioned it to the new HOA board during a meeting. They took it seriously, promising extra patrols and security checks. Cameras were moved, lights installed in darker corners. But the message lingered like a shadow. It made you wonder if Karen had allies or if some part of her reach was still around, even after everything. That same week, your car alarm went off in the middle of the night. You rushed outside, heart pounding. Nothing was wrong. No signs of forced entry. Just a false alarm triggered by a raccoon, the officer later joked. But the moment stayed with you, a reminder that trust had to be earned again. Neighbors started coming to you with questions about security, about how to protect themselves from people like Karen. You gave them advice you'd learned the hard way. Change your lock regularly, you'd say. Get cameras that store footage off-site. Don't ignore small weird things. Follow your gut. Slowly, a network formed, not an official group, but a web of people watching out for each other. A message thread where neighbors shared alerts and updates. A sense of community built on vigilance. At the same time, the legal case against Karen unfolded. Her trial was messy. She claimed she was framed, that everything was a misunderstanding. But the evidence was overwhelming. Emails, videos, forged documents, proof that couldn't be denied. You testified during the trial. Sitting in a cold courtroom, you told your story again. The locks changed, the stolen G-Wagon, the police in your garage. You watched as the jury listened. The faces in the room changed as they saw the full picture. The verdict came weeks later. Guilty on multiple counts. The judge handed down a sentence longer than anyone expected. Karen would spend years in prison. Despite the victory, the neighborhood felt cautious. Old wounds don't heal overnight. Some people kept their distance. Others watched every move carefully. The fear of what if still whispered in the air. That's when you realized the biggest battle wasn't just against Karen. It was against complacency, against the idea that it can't happen here. You began organizing neighborhood workshops. Not fancy meetings or long speeches, but simple gatherings, teaching people how to spot fraud, how to protect their property, how to communicate effectively, inviting experts in security and law enforcement. Slowly, the mood shifted. People started taking responsibility. not just waiting for someone else to fix things. They asked questions, raised concerns early, shared stories from other neighborhoods. It became clear that your story had sparked more than outrage. It had ignited action. One afternoon, a young family knocked on your door. They just moved in and wanted advice on settling in safely. You welcomed them, glad to help. This was the kind of change you wanted to see. Your G-Wagon, once a symbol of violation, became a quiet reminder of resilience. You kept it clean, polished, parked under the new security lights. Each time you opened the garage, it felt like reclaiming a little more control. Karen's name faded from conversations, but her impact remained a lesson. Power unchecked could destroy trust. Silence allowed damage to grow. But standing up, even quietly, even alone, could start a ripple that changed everything. You didn't expect to become a community leader. You just wanted your life back. But life had other plans. And somehow, through all the chaos and fear, you found purpose in that, in helping others protect what mattered, in turning a nightmare into a new beginning.